Incredibly, black teeth were a fashionable touch of true elegance in the Royal English court. Queen Elizabeth I, nicknamed the Virgin Queen, ruled foggy Albion in the second half of the 16th century with unmatched cunning and iron will. She defeated the Spanish Armada, firmly established Protestantism, and paved the way for naval forces, combining the country's ambitions with colonial trade routes. However, behind the shining pearls, purple dresses, and commanding appearance lay the deepest fears and an obsession with social reputation. At that time, the concept of hygiene primarily meant the demonstration of cleanliness rather than concern for health, and Elizabeth turned her own rituals into a true spectacle. She feared water, believing it opened pores and let in diseases, so she bathed only once a month unless a particularly threatening smallpox epidemic arose. Moreover, the Queen carefully preserved the image of a young, untouchable virgin and was zealous about every touch, even of soap and sponge. But the most astonishing thing was her unquenchable love for sugar. This rare cane brought from distant islands served as a symbol not only of sweet pleasure, but also of England's power, mastering new lands. Sugar petals of violets, spicy almond marzipans soaked in thick syrup, and fruits adorned her feasts. And in every spoonful of sweetness, one could sense pride in the trading caravans that delivered the goods across the Atlantic. Yet with this luxurious indulgence came disaster. In the 16th century, dentistry remained at the level of harsh, primitive practices. Teeth were cleaned with sticks, rags, and even resin, and pastes were made from herbal infusions. Elizabeth, despite knowing about enamel erosion, prepared her own tooth powder based on sugar and crushed herbs, hoping that the sweet component would suppress cavities. Instead, sugar literally ate her teeth from the inside, and by 1590, court guests shuddered at the sight of black fragments protruding from the Queen's smile, and the notorious bad breath hindered her conversations. Even when courtiers suggested doctors remove the decayed teeth, stuck crowns, and enamel remnants, Elizabeth, fearing pain, refused until one of her chamberlains stepped forward and voluntarily agreed to pull a tooth before the Queen, who had witnessed his agony enough. Remarkably, after that, the fashion for rotting teeth became a shockwave among the aristocracy. Ash and coal ground into powder stained the smiles of social ladies, and in the eyes of nobles, the darker the teeth, the higher the status and privileges, for the Queen desired it so. Such is the power of monarchy. Even decay and decomposition turned into a sign of luxury. If you enjoy such calm stories about history, please subscribe to the channel. It's free and helps me continue. Have you ever wondered why bathing in the 16th century was considered almost a crime against health? In one of her letters, courtiers attributed to Elizabeth I the phrase that she bathed once a month, whether she needed it or not. And although historians debate the authenticity of these words, the legend itself eloquently illustrated the notions of cleanliness in the Tudor era. At that time, water was revered not for cleansing, but as a carrier of diseases and dangerous miasma, a foul-smelling air believed to be an invisible poison causing plague and erysipelas. 16th century hygiene theorists held that immersion in water weakened the body, opened the pores, and allowed harmful spirits to enter the organism. Therefore, for the Queen, bathing was not considered a luxury but a life-threatening risk. Instead, Elizabeth changed her undergarments, called shirts, several times a day. The light linen fabric absorbed sweat and impurities, like a natural absorbent. Then court apothecaries prepared mixtures of rosewater, vinegar, and herbal infusions, lavender, mint, or rosemary, and maids gently rubbed them onto the monarch's skin. All this took place before the eyes of courtiers, turning the morning routine into a ceremony where cleanliness served less as personal hygiene and more as an element of royal ritual and a symbol of sacred inviolability. After all, the Tudor palace lacked convenient sewage and plumbing, a wooden water basin, dozens of boiling water pots, maids heating kettles over fireplaces. Each time it was akin to preparing for a celebration. Despite this, Elizabeth maintained a reputation for impeccable cleanliness. Hundreds of dresses made from the finest silk and velvet, gloves soaked in perfumes, and an arsenal of fragrant handkerchiefs created an aura of purity. However, real sanitation did not exist either in the palace or on the streets of London. The whiteness of her skin was not natural. Every morning, court painters covered the Queen's face with a layer of lead red mixed with wine vinegar, Venetian ceruse, which concealed wrinkles and pigmentation spots but slowly poisoned the body, causing ulcers and scars. Over time, the mask grew thicker as the royal image demanded an uneven, porcelain-like surface. For the lips, bright red mixtures based on mercury were used, one of the most potent poisons. Meanwhile, courtiers noticed that Elizabeth's moods sometimes changed, her memory faltered, and her hands trembled, classic symptoms of mercury poisoning. Yet without this deadly makeup, the Queen ceased to appear impenetrable and divine. In an era when pale skin signified nobility and tanning indicated dishonest labor in the fields, Elizabeth built a royal legend in which nature itself obeyed her power. Every layer of makeup, every new garment, every scent in the royal chambers was part of a carefully crafted image that protected the dynasty's prestige and transformed the person into a symbol, allowing no slightest manifestation of a mortal, earthly being. Sometimes eternal youth becomes a trap. These classic signs of mercury poisoning remained a complete secret to Queen Elizabeth, but she continued daily to cover her face with lead mercury mixtures because her appearance belonged not only to herself, but to all England. Her image was a source of power. It inspired divine grandeur, steadfastness, and the eternal innocence of the Virgin Queen. Painters were not allowed to depict her true features. Instead, an official face template, copied from early 16th century portraits, was used, and regardless of her age, in all paintings the Queen remained young, flawless, and immortal. She refused to appear in daylight, preferring the soft light of candles and deep shadows that concealed wrinkles and skin imperfections. She refused to go out in daylight, preferring the soft glow of candles and deep shadows that concealed wrinkles and uneven skin. In recent years, her face had become so fragile that court whispers said a light touch would shatter the mask. The Queen hardly dared to wash it. Washing meant erasing the illusion and revealing the vulnerable, aging woman beneath. Did she know about the harmful effects of cosmetics? Historians still debate, but one thing is clear. She consciously placed the mask above her health and was willing to sacrifice her own body to preserve the legend of Gloriana. To understand the royal hygiene, it is important to grasp her fear of losing control. Every inch of her body, from carefully painted eyelashes to the finest gloves and the gathered fragrance, served not merely beauty, but a means of power and concealment of weakness. In the 16th century, water treatments were not considered beneficial. There was a superstition that water brought disease, and a naked body weakened the spirit and symbolized vulnerability. Elizabeth knew this firsthand. Her mother, Queen Anne Boleyn, was crushed by court intrigues, and Elizabeth did not want to appear defenseless. She built her own ritual of cleanliness based on rose water, lavender oil, vinegar infusions, and herbal decoctions prepared by court apothecaries in the palace chambers. These liquids did not remove dirt, but masked odors and created a sense of freshness. Her maids wiped her face and hands, tucked fragrant handkerchiefs into her sleeves, and the Queen herself, like a walking flower garden, wore 100 ornate pomanders filled with amber, styrax, and myrrh, resins to inhale a controlled scent at any moment. They not only saved her from foul odors, but sent a clear message: I am not like others. I do not emit human smell. Gloves were soaked in perfumes, handkerchiefs in infusions, and voluminous dresses, multi-layered with wadding and silk, hid the body's contours and kept scents close to the skin. Hair could not be washed. It was considered dangerous for those wearing such heavy makeup, so it was strengthened with egg whites and sugar syrup, dusted with starch powder, and hidden under exquisite wigs when natural curls began to fall out from prolonged exposure to lead and mercury. However, beneath the heavy layers of powder and fragrances, her body was exhausted. She suffered frequent migraines, hand tremors, deteriorating vision, and nervous system disorders as mentioned by contemporary chroniclers. She died in 1620, and the autopsy revealed signs of deep chemical tissue damage. But for Elizabeth, the image of Gloriana outweighed the price of life, and until her last breath, she remained unflappable and elusive to the vanity of the mortal world. Imagine a woman whose beauty became the cruelest torture. No mirror dared to show her true face. Queen Elizabeth I, striving to embody the image of eternal youth and an unshakable sovereign, resorted to endless layers of cosmetics and perfume. But years of lead powder and aromatic essences weakened her skin. Thin, burned, covered with ulcers and cracks, it soon became the source of court gossip. Rumors that her face could not be touched due to pain grew detailed, as if the skin peeled off from time to time, leaving exposed wounds. It was precisely out of fear of seeing this truth that Elizabeth forbade mirrors in her chambers, and the only proof of her flawless appearance was a courtier who daily applied powder to her shoulders so that no visitor would suspect the dead cells and scars beneath the finest layer. At that time, bathing was considered both a laborious and dangerous procedure, threatening colds and the undermining of noble virtues, so the queen avoided washing not only out of laziness, but also to avoid erasing her weightless mask, a symbol of power and infallibility. In her later years, she carried a fragrant cane. When lower-ranking ladies of the court with unbearable odors passed nearby, Elizabeth would bring it to her mouth and nose, not only to eliminate the stench, but also to emphasize, "I am the monarch, and I am above your mundane world." Her body became an emblem of the crown, and cleanliness ceased to be a matter of health, becoming instead a symbol of untouchable authority. Outside the chambers of Westminster Palace sparkled with gilded ceilings, silk curtains, and velvet carpets, while inside reigned an aromatic deception. In the Tudor era, castles had neither plumbing nor sewage systems. The Queen's indoor toilet was a carved chair with a hidden compartment containing a ceramic chamber pot, which was emptied manually by the court toilet guards, trusted aristocrats whose duties combined personal service to the monarch and participation in secret political discussions. Other courtiers used chamber pots and basins, emptied daily into cesspits beneath floors or behind palace walls. At night, the dirty work was done by night cleaners, people literally called manure collectors, who carried buckets of filth through dark passages and poured them into open ditches. The stench was attempted to be masked by burning lavender, rosemary, and wild sage. The floors were covered with rushes soaked in oils, but beneath them accumulated dust, hair, and rot, from which a new, acrid smell arose. For this reason, the royal court did not stay long in one place. Besides political intrigues and the risk of epidemics, it was also a flight from unbearable stench, which day by day increasingly reminded of the true body of power, trapped by its own splendor. What lay behind the dazzling white visage of the monarch? The longer Queen Elizabeth stayed in the palace, the more acute became the problem of waste removal. In narrow stone corridors, garbage accumulated, and no bottles of perfume could mask the stench coming from the service rooms. Behind the sparkling ceremonial setting and the richest fabrics lurked the everyday danger of plague and talk about the disgraceful state of the royal household. At that time, it was believed that water washed away not only dirt, but also the body's natural forces, and even a whisper around the court that the sovereign allowed herself to bathe more often than protocol permitted could be fatal to her reputation. Therefore, Elizabeth turned the refusal of daily washing into an art of performance. Every morning she allowed herself only a light sprinkling of fragrant water, then powdered her hair and face with lead white, as if creating a porcelain mask of imperishable power. Therefore, Elizabeth turned the refusal of daily washings into an art of staging. Every morning she allowed herself only a light sprinkling of scented water, then powdered her hair and face with lead white, as if creating a porcelain mask of imperishable power. She surrounded herself with master perfumers from France, showered the nobles with rose petals, and the fluttering Westminster footmen carried on their pins dusty, resinous transport arrows of fragrance that concealed the truth about the Queen's hygiene. Every drop of rose water, every layer of expensive powder, and every lavish gown embroidered with monograms became elements of a grand spectacle designed to convince subjects and enemies alike. Elizabeth's power was eternal and beyond time. In a world where a single rumor could destroy a dynasty, image meant more than flesh, and the Queen knew that removing her mask was tantamount to losing the throne. Thus, the birth of the legend of purity did not take place in soapsuds, but was forged in the minds and eyes of people. For a monarch's true purity lay not on the skin, but in the very foundations of power, in an impeccable and inviolable appearance.